Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibiers? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here. It's Wednesday, January 14th. We're going to go over the afternoon session in the Brendan Banfield trial. Y'all, it was the hot mess express. She has no remorse whatsoever for her role in any of this. In fact, on cross today, we really saw this smugness come out, this defiance. And I'll tell you what, I like this defense attorney, John Carroll. He definitely has the patience of a saint because she was so unresponsive to him. Everything was I don't know. Also, she mumbles a lot, so it's really hard to understand sometimes what she says. But let's jump in. The defense brings in communications with Kate Brower. This is somebody that she was talking to who was in the media. Since January 28th, 2025 to October of last year, there were 236 messages back and forth between Juliana and Kate. Juliana says that sounds about right. December 9th, 2024. There's a message from Juliana that says, "Now I'm sending a message because I'm talking to Josh." Each time he sends a message, he transfers 50 credits, which is necessary to send a message. So what this means is whatever app she's using in the jail to communicate, some systems call them stamps. It may be credits in another, but it is customary if you're emailing somebody who's incarcerated to send them the stamps for a reply. December 13th, 2024. There's a message that says, "Yes, let's work together to achieve more things." After a while, when I'm back home, something about a book or a movie, and she says, "Everyone tells me I have talent." March 4th, 2025. She said she had a video call with someone from Netflix who wanted to make a movie or a documentary about her case. They explained compensation, money, etc. It was hard to hear what she said, but I think she said this Josh guy said, "Don't do that." Josh being the other media person she was talking to. She said he wants to finalize the contract, so when I leave here, we can have the interview and everything else, but they want to be exclusive. And he wants to use videos and photos, things for them to add to the movie. So they're thinking about $10,000, which she says would be around $55,000. I'm not sure. It was really hard to understand her. But something about negotiating because she said she wanted more than that. It says, "If I sign the contract, I lose other opportunities to make money. If I talk to other producers, I know I can make more than $25,000. And something about I'd rather it be more than $100,000. Think about our future, what we want to do." For clarification, I believe she is talking to her mother at this point in jail emails. March 5th, 2025. A letter from Juliana. "The film will get made whether I'm here or in Brazil. It'll be an interview and everything. I'm still talking with them, negotiating, and I want what I want, especially since my whole life will be exposed to everyone and they'll be making a lot of money off it. We deserve something." And the defense points out that her tone has changed a lot in these later messages. They're less about being upset, "I'm feeling torture," to talking about the future and what it'll mean for her money-wise. And Juliana says, yes, that's correct. The defense asks, "Why? Do you think you deserve something?" And she said to help her and her family for what they've been through. He says, "What do you mean you deserve something? You were charged with murder because you shot someone. Am I wrong?" And she says, "No, you're not." "Why would you deserve something because of that?" She said, "I didn't say because of what I did. For me and my family, after this is over and everything we've been through." The defense says, "Prior to accepting the deal, were you negotiating then?" She says, "Not that I remember," and she wasn't talking with the media. She wasn't talking about money with anyone. Defense, "This interest of a nest egg came about since you pleaded guilty and accepted the deal." Yes, she said she was thinking about her future. In another letter to her mom, it says, "I'm talking to this author who publishes books. She sent me some of hers, and her name is Kate. She works with Zachary sometimes. They're the ones with Netflix interested in making a documentary about my case. So I'm negotiating with them about money, and they can help me here putting money on my account." Y'all, she says she was getting advice from her cellmates about negotiating with Netflix. In another letter to her mom, she says she's still talking to Netflix, and her contact said he could send her money now, and he would send the contract through her attorney to sign. But she tells her mom she's talking to another company who may be able to offer her more money. She does admit to the defense attorney that she has gotten money from some of these media people, but she couldn't say how much. He brings up a WhatsApp chat on January 9th, 2024 that was between Juliana and Christine. Is this the day the email for FetLife was created? She doesn't know. And by the way, this starts a lot of the I don't knows. If I had $1 for every time this chick said she didn't know, I could retire and move to Florida. That was pretty much the entire afternoon. The defense says, but you were chatting with Christine just prior to the setup of the account. She don't remember. Defense, let me switch gears here and talk about something hopefully you'll remember. January 19th, 2023, there's a FetLife message. He asked if she remembers it. She said it's very similar to the others that they exchanged. She's asked who created that message, and she said the both of us. He asked several times who typed it. She doesn't remember. She says either him or me. He asked about another message, and she says for all of the messages, they're all similar. The defense says, do you see anything you would traditionally write? And she said she would use words Brendan didn't, but she says she's not going to guess, and I'm telling you, I don't remember. He goes through other dates. She said it could have been me, could have been Brendan. The defense says, I appreciate the statement, but are you trying to remember whether or not you wrote this? And she snaps back. I'm telling you, I don't recall. I'm going to tell you, I don't know. He asked who's using the computer. She said, I'm going to give you the same answer, either me or Brendan. The defense reads part of a message that says gagged and don't leave marks on my face. She said that sounds familiar, but they both used the exact words all the time. He asked about another message. She says, with all due respect, sir, and then she goes on to blabbermouth for a hot second. She said, I'm not going to do this. Well, the attorneys approached the bench because the defense thought she meant she's not going to do this anymore. But when they get back from the sidebar, he asked her if it was her or Brendan that sent the message, and she stares at him for a good 5 or 10 seconds before finally saying again, I don't know. Of all the messages you said you don't know, do you realize you told the Commonwealth Brendan did 5 of these messages we've talked about? She said just because she remembered at the time of the interview with the Commonwealth, it doesn't mean she remembers now. He reminds her, you said this on October 25th, 2024 about Brendan making 5 of those messages. He asks if he shows her again, could she remember? She doesn't know. Defense says digital forensics from WhatsApp showed you and Christine had a conversation from 1040 to 1056. Were you with Brendan in the house during that time? She can't say for sure. He asked if Brendan already had Christine's laptop when she talked to Christine on WhatsApp, and guess what? She doesn't know. The defense says he's talking about the creation of the email account that got everything started. And where would you guys use the laptop when doing this? And she said either in the kitchen or the basement. He asked, was there a plan? And she says, obviously. He says, what was discussed? She said Brendan created that email account, and she said Christine had many different email accounts for different things, but she was there when he created that fake email for Christine. He asked, what were you responsible for? She said she wasn't responsible for the plan. So he says, well, what were you responsible for? And Juliana says, I was there exchanging messages. It wasn't my idea for the email account. The defense asked, would you manage the account? She said she may have created messages at Brendan's instruction or changed things, but she never logged into the email. Even if you don't know the dates, do you have any memories of taking her laptop out of the bag? And guess what, y'all? She does. She does have a memory of that. It's a miracle. The defense points out she previously said these posts would happen when one of them would leave the gym early. According to Juliana, whoever got home first would get the laptop and sign in and do all those things. And the defense says all the times we can show you got home before Brendan, that would be when you would post, and she said she thinks so. How many posts did you make by yourself after leaving the gym? And she doesn't think a lot. The defense says as many as 10. She says maybe. Could it be 20? Maybe. Could it be 30? Maybe. Could it be 40? Finally, Juliana says you can go up and up and up, and it's maybe. I'm not sure. So moving on to the Telegram app, when you testified, you said you were present with Brendan and you saw him delete the two-factor code on Christine's cell phone, which is something that Telegram requires for setup. What did you see Brendan do? She said that Brendan had Christine's cell phone and he got the code, then deleted that text off of her phone. She said they also were not worried about getting caught by Christine while they were waiting on that text. You told Christine about the zoo trip a few days prior to the 24th. Were you scheduled to work that day? And she said probably. Christine was scheduled to work, so that would mean she typically would be working. Moving on to replacing the windows. She doesn't know the logistics of it, but she does remember them coming in and replacing the windows. Brendan told her it was part of the plan to make them more soundproof. That Telegram voice call to Joe Ryan was made on the laptop. She said Christine was upstairs and her and Brendan were in the basement when that happened. The defense points out, hey, you remember where you were. It was a few days before the 24th and it was at night. She said probably after 9 p.m. Who emptied the inbox or would email someone? And she says Brendan. What would deleting the FetLife account mean if it's an account Christine doesn't know exists? Juliana kind of snaps and said, you need to ask your client. He can speak for him. The defense says, I thought you guys were in this together. She said, Brendan doesn't have to tell me what he's doing on his own. So the night before the murders, February 23rd, what did you do that evening? She said she went to the gym. And then she's asked, did you take Christine's device when you came home? She says, if you're saying it. He said, I'm asking you a question. Did you take the laptop? She said, I might have. The defense points out the 23rd was a pretty important night, and it probably ran through your head for a very long time. An important night like this, you would know what you did. And then she says she took Christine's laptop. What were you doing with it? She said, Brendan and I were texting on FetLife or Telegram, and they both made lunch for the next day for that fake zoo trip. She said they could hear if Christine was coming down the stairs, and she was concerned they would get caught using the laptop, but ultimately she never caught them. She's asked, what were you saying to Joe? She said they both were there talking and both had access to the laptop. She saw Brendan on the laptop that night, but she was responsible for messages sent the morning of the 24th, but she can't remember typing anything to Joe on the 23rd. You testified you talked to Joe on a phone call. When was that? She said it was a few days prior to the murders. The defense asks about her saying she has trauma, which has affected her memory. Juliana said, I took some classes in jail. The defense asked if someone with an actual medical degree has ever talked to her about her trauma, and she says no. He asked how long she took depression meds. She said maybe 2 months or a little more, but she did not like feeling numb, so she went off of those. She's asked, do you know why the name Anastasia 9 was chosen for FetLife? She said something about Brendan saying it was part of a middle name. However, I looked this up, and from everything I can find, it looks like Christine's middle name was Anne. So I'm not sure if something was lost in translation on the stand or what, but it doesn't seem to be Anastasia. Why did you go to the gun safe? So she does air quotes and says supposedly to take the gun out. Why did you get towels from the bathroom? She said Brendan told me to, and I did. But the defense says, isn't it true the 911 dispatcher told you to get a towel to help with the bleeding? She says she doesn't remember the dispatcher telling her that. When's the last time you heard the 911 call? She said, when I talked to them. She didn't hear it from the Commonwealth, and she wasn't given a transcript to look at before trial. And that's where defense ended. You know, and she's got a really good deal here. I mean, the worst she's looking at is 10 years in prison if the judge goes against the Commonwealth's recommendation of letting her out with time served and shipping her back to Brazil. Personally, I hope the judge socks it to her for the full 10 years. Don't like the chick. Lord have mercy, y'all. So on redirect, they talk about the communications that she has read from all day. Is it fair most of those were longer than the 1 or 2 lines you were told to read? Yes. The earliest communications, shortly after your arrest, you expressed sorrow and sadness? Yes. You were asked about the beginning of the plan. Did you think this was really going to happen? No. Mr. Carroll showed communications you had with the media. And when this is all over and you're out of jail, are you going to be able to work as an au pair? No. Do you know what you're going to do for money support? No. Is your family in Brazil going to be able to support you? No. You know what? If she makes a penny from this, it should go to that kid whose mother was murdered and her dad's probably going to go to prison for life. Just my 2 cents. Is it hard to remember every single day in jail? She said, yes, we try to push thoughts out of our minds. Is every day in jail pretty much the same? Yes. Did you get frustrated with Brendan before you entered your plea? She said, yes. She thought Brendan would help her with her defense. She's asked, how did that make her feel? She said, alone. The reason I was in jail was because of Brendan's plan. The reason you're in jail is because you went along and agreed to Brendan's plan and you shot a man and killed him. You were disappointed with your attorney at times. Did he visit you often enough to get ready? And she says, yes. Were you able to get through all 8 terabytes you got from Discovery? Yes. The state points out you told your mom one time he came in with a laptop that wasn't charged. Did that inhibit your ability to look at Discovery? And she said, oh, yes. Mr. Carroll is insinuating you used the Commonwealth's evidence to make up a story about what happened. Is that what happened? No. Commonwealth, is it fair to say at 22 or 23 you had fallen in love with your employer? Yes. Is your employer older? She says yes, 15 years older. And the Commonwealth points out he is an officer. And the Commonwealth says, as the plan marched on, you're far from home, far from your family. Yes. After you're arrested, you're how old? She was 23. Have you ever been in jail before or accused of a crime? Never. And now you're still a continent away from your family and support system, and you miss them? Yes. You were asked about calling 911 in the morning and dialing more than once. The first time was Christine telling you to call. Brendan told you to hang up. Where did you put your phone? She doesn't know. Commonwealth says, is it possible you put it in your sweater pocket and maybe it knocked around in there? She said, it's possible. Everything you talked to me about yesterday, was that all the truth? Yes, it is. And that was it for redirect. She is subject to recall, but man, it was so frustrating to watch. She was just combative with this defense attorney who honestly never once raised his voice. Y'all, I'd have been shouting. My voice would have been bouncing off all those walls in there. Would not have been able to hold my tongue. But that is it for today. We'll see what tomorrow brings. Hope you guys have a good rest of your evening. We will see you soon.